Alrighty, let's go ahead and get started. Good to see y'all. Thanks for joining this morning. We have got a good program today. We're packed in, so I'm looking forward to it. I did just want to start by acknowledging the catastrophic flooding that has just wreaked havoc in Central Texas. Speaking for myself here, I hope that all of y'all are safe and your loved ones are safe. And I am sending strength and praying for any of those who have been impacted. It's just been a hard week, I know, for many of us. So wanted to acknowledge that. And then secondly, this is our first deep dive call since the Texas Innovation Invitational in Fort Worth last month. It was a huge success. It was great to see many of you in person and chat and catch up. So thanks for those who were there. We had a lot of Alliance members on panels or breakout sessions, and then certainly on day 3 at the team showcase. We had 3-star award winners this year. Congratulations to those folks. We had Team Permian Basin, presented by Gabe McClelland with City of Midland. They proposed an AI-enabled corridor management strategy for a major thoroughfare between Midland and Odessa. Team East Texas, which was presented by Bailey Evans with East Texas Council of Governments, they proposed a preventative maintenance solution that used software tools to really optimize fleet maintenance. And then Team Frisco, presented by Karen Smith with City of Frisco, they proposed a mobility hub that has technology and multimodal solutions to specifically serve a suburban context. So congratulations to those 3 teams and to all of the folks that presented as part of the team showcase. It was a great turnout, super impressive, and always love to showcase the work that y'all are doing across the state. So today we have a handful of presentations I mentioned that are focused on kind of 2 topics. They're related and there's some overlap. We'll talk about hydrogen as a fuel and what that is looking like in Texas, what projects are underway, and you know what's next in hydrogen, and then more broadly heavy duty alternative fuels. So while hydrogen is one of and a growing alt fuel for heavy duty fleets, there are other things going on. We'll hear from Port of Corpus. They've been electrifying some of their yard vehicles. So just thinking more broadly about heavy duty fueling. So first we'll hear from Michael Chamberlain with TxDOT. He will give us a quick update on TxDOT's Alternative Fuels Corridor Program. I dragged Michael into this last week, so he's got a lightning update. We will then hear from Leslie Ruda with Port of Corpus Christi. I mentioned they have a few efforts underway related to hydrogen, but then also an EPA Clean Ports grant that is allowing them to transition some of their tugboats and yard vehicles to low emissions or zero emissions fuels. We will then hear from Mike Lewis with UT Austin Center for Electromechanics. He will share about some of the hydrogen research that they're doing and involvement in some of the hydrogen hubs in Texas. And then lastly, we will hear from Jared Wright with North Central Texas Council of Governments about some of their heavy duty fleet fueling efforts. And then we'll have time at the end for questions. If you'd like to throughout, put them in the chat and I will help monitor that and kind of facilitate Q&A as well. So Michael, if you're ready, I will pass the floor to you to kick us off with a quick AFC update. And then if everyone can just double check their mics, I'm hearing a little bit of feedback. Thanks.
Yes, I am ready, and I will share my screen. Let me know when that comes through.
You're good. We've got you.
Okay.
Thanks,
good morning,
Michael.
everyone. My name is Michael Chamberlain, Director of Data Management Group in the Transportation Planning and Programming Division. I'm happy to give you a hopefully brief update. I will try to make it brief on the NEVI program. So everybody knows that came about in 2021 as part of the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. Pay close attention to the map on the right side of the screen. In 2021, there were 25 stations that met the NEVI requirements. So that was 4 years ago. It seems like an eternity ago, but it was only 4 years ago, almost 4 years. So look at the map closely. I'm going to change it. That's where we are today. So on the phase 1 alternative fuel corridors, the electric alternative fuel corridors, there are 478 stations that now meet the NEVI requirements. So let's look at that again. 2021, 2025. So we have a subset of those stations. We had 82 on the alternative fuel corridors, electric alternative fuel corridors. 29 of those are currently under construction. So the red dots are under construction. They'll be finished later this year, first quarter of next year. The blue dots are actually open, and the purple dots will be open by the end of the summer. 53 of our stations are still currently paused at the federal highway level. They made it to the step in the process, but they did not get through that. So we're waiting for some new guidance, hopefully soon. But again, I want to focus on this. This is 2021. This is 2025. So 478 new stations that meet those federal requirements, at least 4 ports, 150 kilowatts per port. Now, our 8 stations that are open, our 8th station opened yesterday in Sandy Oaks, Texas. So these are some pictures when we do the inspections, drive around the state. I'll have pictures for Big Spring and Sandy Oaks soon. But those are the stations, anywhere from 4 to, in some cases, 12 dispensers, anywhere from 150 kilowatts up to 400 kilowatts, which are good to recharge your car in 15 to 20 minutes to 80%. This is a registration summary, the trend from 2023 to 2025. I've been passing this around. I just want to mention it. There are almost 400,000 EVs currently registered in Texas. So thank you for the North Central Texas Council of Governments, Dallas-Fort Worth Clean Cities for putting this together. We use that as a data source. That data comes from DMV, and we can make this chart for you to show you the trend. It's pretty consistent. For context, July 5th, 2022, there were 134,000 EVs in Texas, and there's almost 400,000. So that's 3 times growth since then. This is my favorite slide. I just included it. The trend slide. Texas is adding about 2,000 EVs per week. Sometimes it's more, sometimes it's less. It's been as high as 9,000 per week. I think it was 1,900 last week. Battery manufacturing capacity is estimated at 1,100 gigawatt hours by 2027. That number is starting to come down a little bit with the changes that are happening at the federal level. We think it will still come down some more. But as stated, that's enough battery capacity for 14 million EVs per year by 2027, which is an enormous amount of capacity. Put that into context, U.S. sales of all types was 15.9 million in 2024, of which about 3 million of those were battery electric, plug-in hybrid, or mild hybrid. Okay. Peak internal combustion engine only sales was in 2017 at 17 million. So that delta, that change in 3 million, that's the electrification that we're tracking. And another just interesting note, an EV has been the best-selling car in the world for the last 2 years. And it may maybe make it this year, maybe not. BYD is a Chinese manufacturer. They make it in there. Where will the batteries be made? Predominantly in the U.S. The battery factory map on the left shows 22 operational battery factories in the U.S., 23 that are under construction, and 5 that are planned. Now, we don't know the future. We don't know how many of those will continue on to completion, but this is where as it stands today. The joke is that, pick your favorite football conference. Most people say the SEC. Most of these battery factories will be in the SEC conference and the Big Ten. Battery recycling factories on the map on the right. Usually when you have a battery factory, you have a recycling factory near or at the same location. And so 31 of those are already open in the U.S. Just quick on electrification and fuel source. Texas is #1 in utility solar. We're #1 in wind. We'll be #1 in power storage soon. I just picked a date on June 2nd, like 10 about now during the day. And it was 63.4% zero carbon with renewables hitting real hard. And this has changed. I know it's variable. It could be 60% natural gas tomorrow. That's just what it is. But I put this up there so people can see that it actually is happening. And on the right side, the one that I put on the 13,185 megawatt hours of free electricity in the grid, that's half the capacity of California. So half the demand, of California. So Texas at this time was producing enough electricity to power half of California. So I just put that out there. And that's it. That's my quick update. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have. I'll kick it back to you guys, and I'll happy to listen to the rest of the meeting.
Thank you, Michael. That was great. I love the graphics, and the SEC Big Ten analogy is an easy one to remember. So I can see why it's popular.
And nine times out of 10, SEC is everyone's favorite conference.
Lori, I see your hand raised if you'd like to jump in.
If we're allowed to pepper Michael with questions, yes, I have a question.
Yeah, I'll keep an eye on time, so go ahead.
Michael, as always, fabulous. I was playing around with some of the maps the other day and trying to speculate how close we're going to be based on those 29 NEVI stations that are going to construction, how close we're going to be to meeting that 50-mile interval. And it seems like we're pretty darn close. There's maybe just a couple of segments. Do you have a summary of that?
We're very close. So the only segments that don't are the where I-10 and I-20 come together in West Texas. There's a 70-mile gap. There's just nothing there. The only thing out there is the TxDOT rest area. I think by the first quarter of next year, we will be able to call the corridors complete functionally. The private sector, again, has stepped up and built those stations on the corridors. The ones that we see on the map were basically the 29 that went forward were the ones that I would have picked to go forward. And so it all really worked out. I think the corridors will be functionally complete by the first quarter next year.
Even with just the 29, that's amazing. That's
Even
fabulous.
with just the 29, that's right.
And a 70-mile gap is really not
It's really
bad.
fine. Yeah, so even with the lowest range vehicle produced today at an 80% state of charge, you can easily cover that gap.
Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks, Lori. Good question. I'd like to add that the only speeding ticket I have ever gotten is in one of those stretches where there's nothing out there. So
Use your best judgment.
It's the Wild West. Yeah. Thank you, Michael. Super helpful. I will share out slides and contact info if y'all have follow-up questions for Michael after this. Our next presentation, all of them will kind of be back to back today and quick updates just to give you a sense of projects that are happening across the state. Leslie, I have got you up next if you're ready to rock.
I can do that. Good morning, afternoon, everyone. I guess it is still morning. Port of Corpus Christi, some of y'all may know us, some of you may not, but little Corpus Christi here has the third largest port in the U.S. We're the #1 mover of crude. We export that crude to other countries. That puts us the #3 exporter of crude in the world. We're only eclipsed by Iran and Saudi Arabia. However, just because we're moving American products to overseas, and frankly, a lot of that is LNG, and so some of that is, it's a mix of things. But we have, we also have aspirations to make it as clean as we can and do things that do things that are in our power to clean it up and diversify those fuel sources. And to me, that's part of what this conversation is: getting to hydrogen, getting to electric, getting to these other fuel sources. It's an and, not an or, if you will. And to prove it, I'm one of those hybrid plug-in hybrid plug-in Jeeps. So I appreciate Michael's presentation, because you're when it's in your world, you kind of pay attention. So personally, thanks, Michael. So 2 years ago, the administration, the Biden administration put forth a $2.79 billion worth of funding to clean ports. It's a special program. It's never going to be, it won't come back again. It was intended to be a one-off, and it was $2.79 million specifically to clean ports and all of the things that go into moving those cargoes around this country. So when you're picturing a container port, the hostlers, the container movers, all of those different things, they're moving to electric, but giving ports more funding to be able to put ZEs, zero emission equipment, into ports. Because we move petroleum and it's through pipelines, if you came to my port today, you would be like, you're the third largest in the world with this thing? Yeah, really? Because it just doesn't look like that. You're not going to see any containers unless we've got a military move going. It's an interesting thing, right? So because so much of it is moved in different ways through pipelines or whatnot. We do move a lot of wind blades, so we're supportive of that industry as well. But personally, in our port space, what could we do to help put ZEs in the space in our port space? And we actually partnered with four external partners. And so what I'll show you, I want to put up on screen, is a map. And this is actually the map from our application, but it'll make it easier to talk through what we did. So we partnered with 3 tug companies to put electric tugs in the waterway. So the first is located in what we call the outer harbor, the other side of the Corpus Christi Bay. So they're putting in electric charging, and we'll have 1 electric tugboat out in this area. When you come into the inner harbor, which is our, this little piece, and when you come to Corpus Christi and you cross our bridge, or our new bridge as of this weekend. Both sections, both you can cross both directions this weekend, and on the new bridge, the New Harbor Bridge. The first thing that you'll see is we have 2 electric forklifts and 1 charging station that are go into a cargo dock and warehousing system that's just west of our office building here. The next one will go in at our maintenance facility. We're putting 4 electric forklifts with 1 charging station, a dual charging station in our maintenance facility. And those are replacements, but all the forklifts are replacements in these cases. So we had on the books to put in forklifts. We're changing those to the electric forklift. This third dot, the fourth dot here, the third one in the Inner Harbor, is our second 2 tugs. So 2 of the tug companies are, I'm going to call them sort of stepsisters. They're not really related, but they're sort of related, and they work out of the same space. And they're actually going to share a charging station. Each of the tug companies will put an electric an electric tugboat in the waterway, and they're going to share a charging station in this case. If you move up the channel a little further to our bulk materials terminal, we're going to add 2 electric forklifts and an electric sweeper truck to that area, as well as charging. And then last but not least, our short line operator owned by it's Texas Coastal Bend Railroad, owned by Watco. They already have 2 electric locomotives that they are working in the Houston port. We're going to bring 2 electric locomotives to Port Corpus Christi, so that and in all of those cases, you'll notice the only one that doesn't work this way is out in the Outer Harbor, that tug company. We're putting enough equipment in spaces so you can be charging one piece of equipment while you're using the other piece of equipment, and then swap them back out. So hopefully, as long as we're moving cargoes, one of those things can be used with an electric locomotive. We were actually awarded $105 million to be able to do this. Most of that is going to the tug companies because electric tugs are about $35 to $40 million, depending on how you dress them. The locomotives are next at $6 million, and then the forklifts and the sweeper truck are all sub $100,000 pieces of equipment. And the cost share on that, so our $105 million is actually covering 69% of the cost of all that equipment and the charging stations to go with them. So if y'all have any questions, that's the update we have for y'all. We were hoping that Jeff would be able to join us. He actually met with the hydrogen commission, the policy commission out of the Texas Railroad Commission, but he ended up with a conflict today and couldn't join us. But we do have a smidge of a hydrogen update, but that really needs to be Jeff. He's the guy you want to hear from on that side. Thank you.
Thank you, Leslie. All good. I do have a couple of questions, and if others do, please feel free to put them in the chat or come off mute. The question I have for you, Leslie, is about technology maturity. So you mentioned there's at least 2 tug vendors. What are y'all finding in terms of like market availability of some of these vehicles, unique vehicles?
In the cases of the tugs, so there is essentially in this country one naval architect. So all of the tug companies essentially use the same naval architect, but then put nuances to each of their pieces of equipment. They will all likely be using, if not the same battery systems, very similar battery systems. The difference in the cost of those really come down to how much power they're putting into them and how many batteries they're adding to them. But the technologies are all about the same on that side of the house.
Thanks. That's super interesting. Lori, do you have a question? Go ahead.
Always. That it's amazing what you're doing. So first of all, thank you for that. And we're downwind of y'all, so that's always helpful. Have y'all thought about the reducing truck emissions at port facilities program that is coming out again from federal highways? Do y'all have any plans for that? And what types of projects would you be looking at?
So we do. This is an interesting question because I'm actually writing, we are finishing a grant agreement with TCEQ. We were actually granted $1 million from TCEQ earlier this year. I didn't even think about this, Anna. So I'm sorry, I could have mentioned this. But we have
That's a good problem to have. Too much going on. Too many good things going on.
Absolutely. It is specifically to reduce emissions in ports. And we have a congestion issue at our grain elevator. If you're familiar with how grain works, they literally harvest into trucks. Trucks go get in line at grain elevators. And when you put that in the middle of a port space, I end up with a 2-mile line of trucks, and it's in August, so you bet that those trucks are running and nobody's going to tell them to turn them off. There's no way you're telling a truck driver to turn that off. That's just not human. We want to find a better way. We need a better mousetrap. We want to see if there's not a way we can do an appointment schedule working with the truck drivers, the farmers, and the grain elevators, so that we can have a more timed, orchestrated ballet, if you will, to get those trucks here on a more on an easier basis, basically. The other thing that we're hoping to accomplish through that is, frankly, to increase efficiencies. That if instead of sitting in a truck line for 6 hours, if I can say, I want 9 o'clock, and I show up at 9, I drop my grain, and I get to make another run, the farmer benefits, the truck driver benefits. You've got that truck out of line, and they're actually being productive at that moment instead of just burning diesel to stay in line. Absolutely, Sharon, logistics is the key. And so our program is not just to, this one is considered not just a pilot, but a pilot and deployment. But we are starting with that stakeholder engagement piece, because if you don't have all those players on board, all you do is move the problem, and that's not what we're intending. We don't want to move it out to the farmer. We want to fix this from start to finish, and just ensure that it actually does make a more efficient process from an organization standpoint, from an operational standpoint, and from an environmental standpoint. So to your question, Lori, if depending on how that goes, because we already have that, it's a bird in the hand. I don't know that we're going to seek that other funding, but we're very aware of that one. And someone posted if it was electric or hydrogen. These are electric at our port, because it's really, if you look at what Amazon has done with their forklifts and some of these other folks, they all started with electric, and then they changed that electric battery to, and I'm speaking out of turn, I'm an accountant by trade. But they take those electrics and add the hydrogen fuel cells onto them. But those were electric forklifts to start with. We see this as an entree into that alternative fuel space.
That's helpful, Leslie. So that the first step is electric, and then from there you grow and kind of transition.
Yes,
I have one last question for you. So Joe, I hope that answered your question in the chat. This is just more broadly about maritime operations. I know you spoke about yard vehicles and support vehicles. What are y'all seeing in maritime fuel? I know that some of the European shippers have made announcements about their fleet strategy. Can you just share high level what you're seeing there?
I wish I knew that
Okay.
Again, you know, like I get to be focused on my footprint for the most part. I don't get to be as focused on some of those others. I think it's a great question, and I will likely dig in just because it's interesting to hear what else is happening. But even though the administration that we're working with now, in terms of Washington, has sort of changed that focus a bit. Those European countries, those other countries that we're working with, some of the African and Asian countries, they have not changed their policies. They're still looking for that other half. They want that green corridor, and we're the other half of it. You know, all of those ports in the U.S. are the other half of that. We've got to figure that out at some point.
Right. Yeah. Shipping is so interesting because it's this mix of public and private, but then also so global. Like your clients and your partners are global. So
absolutely.
Thank you, Leslie.
Thank you.
I think we're good. Okay. One last question from Sharon. Are there lessons learned from other ports for circulation through the area? I think maybe talking about the congestion issue you brought up.
It's interesting. We've talked to every partner we can find, and we are looking at how trucks are handled in a container space, but it's a very different thing than what we're talking about with this harvest moment. So some of those, there may be some systems that can be tweaked, but we're bringing in someone who knows those systems. The intention is to bring in a consultant who understands those systems, but can see through the forest to see how is that going to apply in this other situation. It's the same problem with different constraints.
That makes sense. Grain and goods are have specific challenges. Thank you, Leslie. Again, I will share out contact info. So if y'all have follow-up questions, please reach out to Leslie or folks at Port of Corpus. Next up, we have a presentation from Mike Lewis. Mike is with UT Austin, so a neighbor of mine, but with the Center for Electromechanics. They're doing a bunch of research on hydrogen that I think will be relevant to this group. So Mike, I will pass it to you. We've got your slides, so I think you're set. Let me see.
All right,
We're not
I started sharing my slides. Can everybody see them? I don't know.
Yes, we
Okay.
can see them and we can hear you also.
Okay, great. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Once again, Mike Lewis. I'm the director of the Center for Electromechanics. We are an organized research unit at the University of Texas in Austin. And we are located on the J.J. Pickle Research Campus, which is about 10 miles north of the downtown academic campus, which you might be a little more familiar with. A little bit more of an industrial area allows us to do larger scale research out here, get out of the basement of the engineering lab, for example. At CEM, we do research in a number of areas. It's always sponsored research, whether it's sponsored by government or private industry, so working off soft funding. Our center is full-time research staff, technicians, engineers, scientists. We are not traditionally faculty members here, but we do collaborate with faculty and bring in students as much as possible in our projects. I won't go into this slide in detail, but here is just to say that we do a number of different things. Hydrogen happens to be one of them. One of our core expertise areas is in electric machines, motors, generators, flyable energy storage systems. We also have a big grid solutions program. So how do we do large scale grids, microgrids? How do we identify faults and mitigate those and put sensors on networks and so forth? But hydrogen is also a big focus. And there are a few different areas where we are hosting different faculty and some of their research that are listed there on the kind of rightmost column. I think what sets us apart from most university research groups and centers and organizations are the facilities that we are provided by the university. So for one, we're on the Pickle Research Campus. It's close to 500 acres of dedicated research space that hosts a number of different research centers and organizations like ours. But at our facility, for example, there's a few, this is just highlighting some of our capabilities here. So we, have a large machine shop, a large high bay facility and space to do large scale experiments and research. For example, there are 25-ton cranes throughout our high bay, so we can do really big things. We even have capabilities of winding composites, for example, and then we have a megawatt capable microgrid facility. And more recently, we built a new hydrogen research facility, which is what the rest of this presentation will focus on. But when it comes to hydrogen, we've been in this kind of research business in hydrogen for about 20 years now. In 2006 and 2007, we installed the first permanent fueling station, hydrogen fueling station in Texas. That's the image kind of in the upper corner of this quad set here. And operated the very first commercial fuel cell vehicle back then. That station was operational up until about 2020, when we decommissioned it and built the new facility that we'll talk about later. But over the years, we've done a number of things focused on vehicles, hydrogen fuel cell vehicles, different demonstrations with buses, building up other first of their kind vehicles. And then we found ourselves getting into other adjacent hydrogen technologies, such as storage tanks and compression, and maybe more or less traditional hydrogen generation mechanisms. So we've done a lot of it, all leading to where we are today. A little bit more about one of those vehicle projects. This is one that was a very successful project for us in that at the end of the day, the vehicles and the hydrogen fueling station availability in California really did not lead to a lot of success, just because we had a hard time getting hydrogen. But this is a project where we collaborated with the Department of Energy, with private industry. We brought in student interns to build up these first of a kind prototype vehicles. Some of those interns went on to work for the private company at the end of the day, where they built 15 more of these vans in phase 2. So it really kind of touched all parts of what we try to do at the center, whether it's research and doing a first of a kind system, educating students, but also just getting the technology and know-how out into the marketplace. So a very cool project that went on for a number of years, but it wrapped up in December, this past December, and largely ended because the hydrogen fueling stations and availability of hydrogen in California was pretty limited. It was costly, problematic, and UPS just kind of got tired of dealing with it, to be honest with you. But moving on, where we are today is we have in place now a new hydrogen R&D facility that was part of our H2 at scale demonstration project with the Department of Energy. Here we built out this hydrogen facility and also built out a model to understand how you would deploy hydrogen infrastructure in Texas in the future, and wrote kind of a framework and strategic report around that. That hydrogen facility, well, we'll get to that in a minute. Here's just a little bit of background. We started the project in July of 2020. We'll be wrapping it up this year. We're actually have an extension request through the end of this year, not July 25. The project includes a number of industry partners. You can read them all here for yourselves, but effectively it includes someone from just about every point in the supply chain or value chain when it comes to hydrogen. The Proto Hub is shown here. So this is what we built under the project. This is our demonstration side of it. It is a first of a kind hydrogen research and development facility that includes hydrogen generation from renewable natural gas using a steam methane reformer, hydrogen generation from electrolysis of water using emulated wind and solar power profiles so that we're producing it in a renewable fashion. There's hydrogen storage, compression, and distribution on site. We have hydrogen vehicle fueling capability, 350 bar and 700 bar. With that, we actually have a few Toyota Mirais as part of the project. You can kind of see them in the background of this picture. There's a blue car here and a red car there. And then lastly, we have a stationary fuel cell on the site that's creating power from hydrogen. That power is going to our computing center on campus. There are some specs here about the system, but it's roughly combined, we're closer to 80 kilograms total per day, where the steam methane reformer today is not producing 80 kilograms per day. It's closer to 40. So combined between the reformer and our electrolyzers, we're producing about 80 kilograms per day. If you need some context for that, that's roughly what we're looking at putting on a Class 8 truck today. Fuel cell transit buses hold maybe about 40 kilograms. The Toyota Mirais or your light duty passenger vehicles hold about 5 kilograms of hydrogen. So it's a decent amount. It's by no means an industrial scale, but a pretty fair amount. Our fuel cell outputs a peak power rating of 100 kilowatts. And as I mentioned, we have 350 bar and 700 bar fueling. On the infrastructure deployment side, the model we built, it's a model called HOWDI. It stands for Hydrogen Optimization with Deployment of Infrastructure. This model was used to study how hydrogen infrastructure might grow out throughout the state of Texas as we think about different policies or scenarios that might be in play. Do we care about carbon? Do we not care about it? Is there a tax credit for hydrogen? Is there not? So forth. Or, is it only electrolytic hydrogen and nothing else, or do we have the ability to do SMR with carbon capture, for example? But this model informed a framework and strategic plan for deploying hydrogen infrastructure in Texas that we have available on our website. And I'm happy to share that with the audience at a later date. Send me an email or what have you. Maybe I'll share a version of this presentation that actually has a link to that report when it's all said and done. The HOWDI model, I wanted to point out, did not end with the Hydrogen at Scale project. It's actually now being used on the hydrogen or the H2LA project, which is developing a hydrogen corridor between Houston and Los Angeles. Even though the focus here is I-10 in these graphics, that corridor really has expanded throughout much of the Southwest. It includes I-40 and I-20 and a lot of the other interconnecting routes. And then, of course, the Texas Triangle is part of that. But we're using the HOWDI model to help inform how we would deliver hydrogen to fueling stations throughout that region. So a lot of modeling is being done by the Oak Ridge National Labs to understand the truck traffic and patterns and where we need stations and how big those stations might be. And then we're using HOWDI to understand, well, where can we make the hydrogen? How do we deliver it to the stations? How do we reduce the cost of all that? So I think this is going to be very informative. It might help out with some planning activities for hydrogen fueling stations in the future within Texas and across the country. We're actually getting a lot of interest from a lot of fleets all over the country wanting us to use this model and approach in their region. But looking to the future, so with the Hydrogen Proto Hub, that's the facility I showed earlier. We are rebranding it as the Proto Hub in the midst of that, getting away from the one-off H2 at Scale project. We think there's a great future for using that site as a proving ground for emerging hydrogen technologies. That could be any part of that value chain or supply chain, making hydrogen, distributing it, using it, whatever the case might be. We have ongoing projects that are going to start blending hydrogen with natural gas on the campus. We are adding a capability to the site to emit hydrogen at a known quantity. So for those companies and groups who are developing hydrogen emission sensors for environmental reasons, we'll have a place to come test those. We've had interest from vendors wanting to prove out like e-fuels or ammonia production systems as well. But a lot of potential for the site to really kind of help with those valley of death type technology adoption curves and really proving out hydrogen. And also, we think there's going to be a big opportunity for the site to help contribute to training, education, and workforce development in the future. We do tours almost on a weekly basis at the site. Anybody on the call is welcome to reach out to me if you would like to come check it out. But as we're moving forward, we think those tours are going to start becoming more focused and developing educational and training curriculum. That could be for first responders, AHJs, regulatory officials, but it might even be for workforce development as we partner with some of those kind of trade schools around the state as well. But with that said, I think that was my last slide, and happy to take some questions if there are any. It's probably worth noting this picture here. A couple of weeks ago, we drove all 3 Toyota Mirais from Austin to Houston to attend the Hydrogen Technology Expo. We took about 7 different students with us and a few researchers, did a 365-mile round trip, getting 85 miles per gallon, had a per gallon equivalent, and had a quarter of a tank of fuel remaining. So I believe that's quite possibly the biggest fuel cell vehicle road trip in Texas ever. So we're kind of proud of that. Anyway, this was when we got back to town and taking a big group photo with all the vehicles. So
that's awesome. Thank you, Mike. Great information across the board. I like bringing in research perspective because you see, how these ideas are born and prototyped and piloted, and then how they impact things like port activities, corridors like Michael talked about, and then we'll hear from Jared after this about what the COG is doing for charging. So kind of the whole life cycle. Do y'all have questions for Mike about any of the projects or research that he presented about? I've got a couple. Well, my main question is just in your experience, there was a question earlier about lessons learned. That's what I'm interested in. What have y'all found are the main challenges? I think looking at the H2LA, the corridor, I-10 corridor, is it cost currently? Is it market buy-in? Is it just kind of logistics, like where do we produce and then fuel and store and all of that? What are the main challenges you see right now for scaling?
Well, I guess I maybe have a couple of different answers to that in a way. When it comes to the H2LA project specifically, a lot of the modeling we're doing at the end of the day is just kind of theoretical, right? We're looking at existing routes and trips. The model solves something out for you. It gives you a lot of great insight into some of the, I guess, bigger driving factors, right? Like one of the things we've learned is hydrogen is going to be cheaper in Texas than it's going to be in California, it looks like, by probably, about a third of the price, give or take, right? It's a pretty substantial difference. So we see the model wanting to build out the hydrogen infrastructure in Texas for trucks before it does California. But of course, anecdotally, in the real world, nobody's talking about that right now, right? So it's kind of, that's kind of what we are seeing with that modeling activity is what it's pointing us to. Maybe policies and other things aren't really driving that pathway. So it ends up producing results that, maybe contradict what we're actually doing in real life. And I don't know, maybe we need to start focusing on Texas a little more with that. When it comes to the proto hub facility in this demonstration, though, what this demonstration has driven home as we've rolled out all these different pieces of technology is that the fundamental technology seems to be pretty sound, right? Like an electrolyzer stack, a fuel cell stack. Our vehicles, the Toyota Mirais, we've put maybe 25,000 miles on all three cars combined. One of the cars rarely gets driven, and that's another story. But anyway, we put a lot of miles on the cars, not a single problem with them. A lot of the infrastructure on the ground, though, the fundamental technology is fine. It's all the supporting equipment around it. For our fuel cell power system, for example, and I think this is what the industry is going to see, has been seeing, and might continue to see for a while. A lot of these things, even though the fuel cell we bought is a commercial system, right? They got a product number for it. I go get a quote, get it turned around relatively quickly. Integrating that into a new application for the first time, integrating it with a Hitachi inverter for the first time, led to numerous problems. It was communication issues. There were, DC power supplies that failed on us prematurely. In our electrolyzer system, it's things like water pumps or solenoid valves that go wrong, not the electrolyzer. So a lot of the technology, the fundamental technology is pretty sound, but a lot of these systems are getting developed for the first time, and they're going through growing pains. I think that's what plagues us to some degree with the hydrogen fueling stations in California, right? Just equipment that breaks down a lot. So we're going to have to, there's going to be some early adoption and some growing pains along the way. But if we want to get to that end goal, they're not fundamental challenges that can't be overcome. These can be overcome, but it's just identifying the right components for those technologies.
That's helpful. Yeah, that's a good perspective. I think a lot of my work recently has been in ITS technology, and it's the same story where the individual parts and pieces are there, but the system integration and then integration with agency software, that sort of thing is the challenging part. Thank you, Mike. That was super helpful. If y'all have follow-up questions or want to visit, you're in Austin or nearby. I've actually been, and you're a neighbor at the Pickle campus. So I'm happy to coordinate that or put you in touch with Mike as well. And then our last presentation today is going to be from Jared Wright at NCT COG. I'm excited to hear this one. Mike's presentation and discussion reminded me of a story from some folks at Toyota. It was a couple of years ago, but they had I think it was like a Class 8 truck in Port of LA, and they wanted to showcase it in Texas, but there were no fueling stations, so they would fly it to Texas, drive it around a while, and then fly back to LA to fuel up. So I think those days are behind us soon enough, but we'll hear more from Jared now about heavy duty fueling and what COG is doing.
Yeah, thanks, Anna. I'm Jared Wright. I'm a senior planner at the North Central Texas Council of Governments. We are the regional planning agency for the DFW area and also the Metropolitan Planning Organization. And we also host the Dallas-Fort Worth Twin Cities and Communities Coalition. And today I'll be giving an update on our Charging and Fueling Infrastructure Corridor Award. So we were awarded 2 projects under the first round of the CFI program from Federal High Administration. And this is focusing on our corridor award for hydrogen refueling. So I mentioned we are the regional planning agency for the DFW area. And you'll see on the map here that we have a project that encompasses the entire Texas Triangle. So we did something a bit weird with this program, and we applied to build a hydrogen refueling for the entire Texas Triangle, because we were building on a planning study we did back in 2022 that really showed that you need a full network of hydrogen refueling stations, to the point that Michael was bringing up, to really have refueling at each point of the triangle and enable freight to move throughout the entire region of Texas and refuel with hydrogen refueling. So we applied, and we were successfully awarded our full request of $70 million to build 5 medium heavy-duty hydrogen refueling stations. These will be public accessible hydrogen refueling stations at existing truck stops on those points you see on the map, and we'll be building 1 hydrogen refueling station at each of those zones you see there. So 1 in the Fort Worth area, 1 of those 2 points in South Dallas and Port area, 1 near Houston, 1 near San Antonio, and then 1 along 35 to add some supplemental fueling near Waco. So 1 of each of those had to be selected, and we are still moving forward with this project. We were able to get $31 million of the $70 million obligated, and we're moving forward with that obligation and moving forward with plans to obligate the remaining funding. So still working hard on this project and working to build out those first hydrogen refueling stations for heavy-duty vehicles. And here you can see a timeline of our journey through this project. So I mentioned this is from the Federal Highway Administration CFI Corridor Program that was released back in February of 2023. And then following the release of that proposal, we knew we wanted to apply and do something with either hydrogen or electric recharging. And so we put out a call for partners to get private sector partners to help us develop our proposal. And we submitted that application in May of 2023. And then we heard back from Federal Highway Administration January of last year. And there's a bit of a journey there to one, negotiate contracts with the Federal Highway Administration, but also get Transportation Improvement Program or TIP listings for the $31 million I mentioned to get that obligated. And during that time, we also received National Environmental Policy Act categorical exclusions for all locations from TxDOT, because we specified these would be, again, at existing truck stops, not disturbing any undisturbed ground, destroying any vegetation. These would be out already existing truck stops, where there's already concrete and existing fueling sites. So that allowed us to enter a contract with Federal Highway Administration in December of last year. So we were able to get that obligation of $31 million and continue to move forward with the project. And we've still been working on projects since then. And just last month, we were able to execute that agreement with the station developer that we partnered with for their call for partners that will be building out these stations. So just some next steps here. So we're looking, like I mentioned, to continue to request the remaining obligations for this project to close out the remaining 40 million or so. So we'll be selecting those final project locations within those remaining zones by the fall of this year to make sure we have time to get those obligated through the TIP and the STIP with TxDOT and Federal Highway Administration. And to do that, we'll be coordinating the local governments in those project areas. So we are responsible for the ones in our region, but then that requires a lot of coordination for the metropolitan planning organizations outside of our region. So HGAC, the Waco MPO, Alamo Area MPO, and making sure that's in all the administrative documents needed to obligate this funding. And then also we'll be conducting outreach and engagement for the infrastructure. So we want to make sure local fleets are aware of the infrastructure in the region. So doing outreach, making sure everyone's aware of that these fueling stations for hydrogen refueling are coming, solving the chicken and egg that here's going to be refueling stations, and also looking at complementary opportunities within the region, other funding programs that come from TCQ, or in our own case, we were awarded the EPA Clean Heavy Duty Vehicle program from EPA. And so we'll be using that to fund some vehicle replacements as well. So solving both the chicken and egg equation there and making sure that fleets are ready to adopt and willing to take the plunge in adopting hydrogen heavy duty vehicles. And we also want to make sure the public is aware. So we've done some initial outreach, but as these stations get closer to construction, we want to make sure that we're hosting public engagement events, that the community is aware that these hydrogen refueling stations will be built near them, that they're aware that they're there. And then also doing the same for first responders, make sure they're aware and have adequate training. We'll be partnering with the station developer on that to make sure that first responders are ready to respond in the case of any incidents involving these stations. And these sites will all have staggered construction. So I mentioned there's 5 hydrogen refueling stations. We don't expect they'll all be built at the same time. It'll be staggered with one going on first, maybe a couple simultaneously, and then slowly building out the rest. So we don't expect construction to begin until 2027, and then operational in 2028 to allow time for fleets to be ready and start adopting these vehicles, placing orders, so they already have the infrastructure in place to refuel these hydrogen vehicles. That's everything I had. Available for any questions.
Thank you, Jared. That's great info. I'm glad to know that this effort is still moving forward. And again, it's really cool to see the work that Mike is doing and others that we've heard from, and then how this all ties together. We have got some time for questions. If folks have questions for Jared and you'd like to drop them in the chat or come off mute. I had 2. Jared, I may have missed this, and I apologize if so. Can you share what sorts of locations are y'all looking at for the charging facilities? Is it like city owned, like publicly owned, or what's the strategy there?
Yes, these will all be privately owned at existing truck stop locations.
Okay, gotcha.
So that'll be with the station developer that we partnered with at their existing truck stop facilities. These will be kind of adding on to those truck stops, adding a couple lanes for hydrogen refueling.
Okay, gotcha. That's helpful. Thank you. And then the other question I had, what are any of the either COG area or some of the partners that you are working with, like Waco, those areas, are they looking at fleet transitions? Like I know trash trucks are kind of the heavy duty stuff. There are grants to transition those. Have y'all been coordinating any of that in the DFW area?
Yeah, so we've been making sure our local fleets up here are aware, the ones that we think could be interested in hydrogen. So, especially like transit vehicles, we see this could be a great opportunity for them.
Yeah.
And the station locations really just didn't make sense, but these locations could provide a chance for them to start dipping their toe in the waters and seeing if this would work for them. So we've been in contact with local fleets in our region that we think may be interested, but no concrete plans yet. There's still, a few years before these stations are fully built.
Yeah, gotcha. Thanks, Jared. Mike, I see your hand raised.
Yeah, Jared, a lot of times when we're, working in and about this space, there seems to be a lot of, oh, we're not going to put in the station until we have a commitment, right? A takeoff agreement with a big anchor customer or fleet or whoever. Like, how are you closing that gap with getting the station developer to build the station? Anyway, are we having to find the trucks in tandem? Because I don't know, when you talk about, I don't know, as you presented, it seemed like you're finding the trucks or fleets in tandem. It's just letting them know, hey, this will be available, but I can't see anybody putting in the capability if they can't sell the hydrogen.
Right. Yeah, we've been working closely with the station developer on that. So they're identifying fleets that will be kind of some of those anchor fleets. And then we want to just do our best to make sure that the local governments that we work closely with are aware, and that any local fleets in the region. And like I mentioned, our Clean Heavy Duty Vehicle Award. So we'll also have some of the funding coming from us at the council governments to fund hopefully some of those hydrogen vehicles as well. But that's all, sort of in tandem to make sure that as these come online, there's vehicles there to support them as well. But they're looking for commitments as soon as they can.
Thanks, Mike. Good question. There's two in the chat that I'll read quickly. So Ben Anyacho with TxDOT asked, what are the specific criteria and process for selecting the fueling sites for each zone?
Yeah, so we've been working again with the station developer on that, and really some of that comes down to existing plans. So, there's other awards. There's the hydrogen hub down in the Gulf Coast area that may be adding some hydrogen facilities down there, as well as any other private sector developments to add hydrogen refueling. So making sure that it's not competing against that. And also, like Mike was saying, seeing where that demand is, where these anchor fleets may be, and sort of building to service them as well.
That's helpful. And then there was a question from Suzanne, which Michael added some clarification. Suzanne recommended looking at TxDOT facilities, but there's a law about rest areas. So that's off the table, but an interesting conversation there. Other questions for Jared or the COG team? All right. Thanks to all of our presenters. This was a good one. I like seeing the whole breadth of activities in heavy duty and hydrogen and electrification for some of those interesting vehicles at Port of Corpus. I really encourage y'all to follow up with any of these presenters if there are questions, or if you'd like to visit the Pickle campus as Michael offered. I will share out slides afterwards as well. And we have recorded this, so I'll share that. And if there are others on your team or in your agency who you think would benefit from this discussion, please feel free to forward it to them. Our next call, y'all will remember we're doing monthly calls in 2025. So our next one is early August, I think the 4th, the first Wednesday. And I will send info out later this month about that agenda and that discussion. So thanks for being here today. Good to see all of y'all. If there's anything I can help with, please reach out, and I'm happy to connect folks and have any follow-up conversations. Take care.